Welcome back to the Horse Talk Show presented by Palm Chevrolet, your hometown Chevy experience. Thank you to Larson Farms, our broadcast sponsor, Idaho's finest alfalfa. We love to have a good laugh on the break, as you can tell. Coming back now, we have a very interesting 2 segments coming up. We were going to actually do 1 segment, but after reading up on some of this material, I realized what an incredibly interesting topic this is, and that we actually needed 2 segments to do it. So joining us now, I have the CEO and founder of Prisma Imaging with us, Michael Silva. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, Louisa, thanks for having me.
Let's start off with the basics. Tell us what Prisma Imaging is.
Sure. Well, we formed Prisma in 2017, and the purpose was we wanted to develop an equine imaging system that would address the shortcomings with current imaging. What's unique and novel about what we've done is we can image the entire anatomy of a standing conscious horse.
Wow.
In comparison, current technology, you can't get to the entire anatomy, and you have to, in many cases, knock the horse out or anesthetize them, which can be very dangerous.
Right, absolutely. So tell us what made you get to the conclusion of how important to have this kind of imaging in horse healthcare. Of course, the 1,000 times more dangerous it is if you have to use an anesthesia, of course. But other than that, what really brought this to the forefront? Are you a horseman yourself, and is that kind of one of the things that took you in that direction?
Well, people are usually surprised, when they ask that question, what the answer is. And my background really isn't, involved with the equine industry or even in, the medical aspects of it. What drew me to it was I was able to see that there was a real problem with how horses were being treated, especially when it came to, certain types of diagnostic for which, imaging is really, really important. And why it's really important is horses are prey animals. And what that means is that, unlike Mr. Ed, they're not going to tell you when something's bothering them. So unfortunately, by the time it becomes, visible, whether you can see it in the horse's gait or some other manifestation, it's usually too late, or it's more serious than than it could have been if it had been detected sooner. So with our technology, as I was saying before, since it's the horse is conscious, it's very easy to employ, and we can access the entire anatomy. And, we've spoken, in our development, we spoke to a number of equine veterinary professionals, and, they all agree that radiography and especially CT, which, that's computed tomography, which is basically a volumetric image of a part of the horse's anatomy, are some of the most effective ways to be able to see if there's something that, of concern, hopefully before it turns into something that could be, career-ending or even, fatal.
Catastrophic, right, fatal, yes. Yeah. Have any other companies actually succeeded in developing full-body imaging for horses?
The short answer is no. For the ventures out there that have attempted, to develop equine imaging or CT imaging for the equine patient, you've got a couple of different scenarios. As I said before, none of them can do the entire anatomy, or they require for the horse to be anesthetized or knocked out to get the images, or they're really just repurposed CT medical equipment from the human industry. So it is and there was actually even one company back in 2016 had the good idea of using robotics, which is one of the technological advances of our system, but they really fell short. They never completed any of their development, and as a result, was never able to build a working system.
So it really is a CT scan. It's different. Is that what you're saying? It's a CT scan.
Well, let me explain that. There's really, when you say radiography, that's obviously a very broad term. And so starting with kind of the simplest is, what would be called a two-dimensional image, which is, if you've ever been to the doctor and you just stand in front of a plate, they do a very quick pulse of radiation, and it creates, a two-dimensional image of your insides. CT, which stands for computed tomography, is actually what they're doing is they're taking multiple images of the interior of your body, typically the skeletal system. And what they'll do is, so in a CT, it might be made up of, hundreds of individual images. And the real magic is in the reconstruction of those images. You're able to see inside of the anatomy. And that's why it's such an effective tool for diagnosis, or to really see what's going on inside the patient.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Just amazing.
On the racetrack, they used to have a fluoroscope, which was with a standing animal, but it would heat up so fast that it wouldn't stay working. And I really don't know why I don't see the fluoroscope as much anymore.
Well, again, a fluoroscope is, again, that's just going to give you a quick kind of, snapshot of the interior. Or when I say the interior, you'll see the bone, but you're not going to see what's inside of it. And so for most, medical conditions, that require treatment, it's not necessarily going to reveal, which is why, and I don't know, I know I've had this experience, and most people I have too, is, when you go to the doctor for, something related to orthopedic, they'll start off with a two-dimensional image, which they could probably do in their office, and then inevitably they're going to send you out for a CT image, which is really going to show, what the real issue is.
Now, does motion in the horse affect this image? Because I know even motion in regular X-ray affects the image, even though it's digital.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because that really gets to one of the novel advancements that we've developed. That's an integral part of our system. And that, yes, there is going to be, in a standing conscious horse, there's going to be some movement. So the way we address that is we have remotely mounted motion correction cameras. And what these cameras do, well, they really serve two functions. In terms of image quality, is while the images are being taken of the horse, the cameras can track the precise location of the part of the horse that's being imaged. So at the end of the image acquisition, it can take that data and it integrates it with the reconstruction software, so it corrects for that motion.
Cool.
Another thing that our motion correction does is, people say, okay, you've got a horse and you've got this robot. It actually helps guide the robot into the correct position relative to where the horse is. So, it takes into account all the precision that you need. That system helps ensure that happens.
Wow.
Amazing.
Is this something where a clinic can afford this machine? I know because
I think you
can't not afford it.
Well, I mean, obviously it could do a lot, but sometimes it's cost effective because you got to put that cost out onto your client. And a lot of times your average person, unless it's winning the Kentucky Derby, you can't afford it. You understand what I'm saying?
I missed the first part of the question.
I said, is it cost effective for a clinic to buy it for the normal average people with horses?
I would say that in the long, I'm going to answer that for Michael, and I think we're about to get the 1 minute, but I would say that in the long term, that this could be something that could be so beneficial that it could actually balance out the cost. But hold that thought, because we have to take our break. But we are going to come right back. We're keeping Michael Silver with us for another segment, so we'll have more for you. Stay with us on the Horse Talk Show. Back on the Horse Talk Show, presented by Palm Chevrolet, your hometown Chevy experience. Thank you to Larson Farms, our broadcast sponsor, Idaho's finest alfalfa. I'm Louise Barton in the studio with my co-host, Paulette Stout. And we have a special guest with us on the phone, Michael Silver. We've been talking about Prisma Imaging. We're going to come back in a minute just to discuss Paulette's question. But just to kind of give you a little summary of what we've covered so far, the current issues with CT scans and radiography are things like the risk of anesthesia, life-threatening, dangerous for horse and medical personnel, cannot capture the high mass body parts like abdomen, hips, and axial skeleton, can lead to an incomplete diagnosis, and the risks mean it cannot function as a regular health check or pre-purchase. Solution: Prisma Imaging brings you robotics, 2 types of radiographic detectors, and a remotely mounted motion correction system, which was a question Paulette asked, and Michael filled us in on that. Michael is the CEO and founder of Prisma Imaging, and this is a very exciting thing for the future, certainly for horses at racetracks where we've seen a lot of catastrophic accidents have happened. Hopefully this is going to be a wonderful preventative. It's also going to work for pre-purchase and detecting when you have the horse that's just a little bit off and you're not really sure what it is, but you know the horse so well, you know there's a problem, this is going to be able to detect even small problems that could turn into big problems. So that's kind of what we've covered so far. Paulette's question at the end of the last segment was actually a very good question, and that was, how is something so incredible as this, A, going to be affordable enough for a vet clinic, and B, be affordable enough for the clients for their horses, because the vet clinic, if they purchase something that's obviously a high cost, they've got to pass that cost on. So that was a question that, Michael, you were going to answer before the break.
Yes, that's a great question, and by the way, a wonderful summary. I think what Paul is referring to is what we call in the industry return on investment, or ROI. And that was one of the things we were very sensitive to when we were figuring out the feasibility and the viability of the system for the equine practices. And what we determined is that, once a practice has a certain number of caseloads, the return on investment is actually pretty quick, really less than a year. And the reason for that is, just because this is state-of-the-art, cutting-edge technology, as far as the patient or the end user is concerned, it's a lot less expensive than conventional CT or any other type of radiography, because the cost of employing you don't need a full staff of people. You don't need to anesthetize the horse. So we actually think that with the volumes that these practices are going to be able to, have the system working at, the cost per scan is actually going to be relatively low. And when you think about, an average thoroughbred, for example, costs about $45,000 a year to maintain. And if you're thinking, literally at, what we're projecting at, hundreds of dollars per scan, I don't think any owner is going. As a matter of fact, I know this. We asked a bunch of owners and trainers out there that own thoroughbreds, and they said, yeah, absolutely, they would take advantage of this. And I think, and we did the same analysis for show jumpers and other competition. And then if you even look at your recreational horses, yeah, it might be that, somebody doesn't want to spend money, but in my experience, and I think, you're both horse owners, they're like pets, and, you're going to want, you're going to want the best care. So to answer your question, from an investment standpoint, the numbers are really favorable in terms of how quickly the system pays for itself. And more importantly, not only is it going to be a revenue source from imaging, but they'll actually now be able to go to their client and say, this is what your horse needs. Mm-hmm. And they'll be able to, that's where they're going to really make their money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so would it be comparable to regular digital X-raying in cost? So you could do a whole leg, or is it a whole system that you're doing? I mean, every horse isn't scanned all over, but you would do areas. Like right. If I wanted the shoulder down to the foot, just the right leg, would that be a comparable cost for as a pair?
Well, that would be up to the clinic doing the pricing, obviously. But I would think it would be done by area compared to full body. I mean, if you're not having the whole body scan, there's obviously a lot less time. And talk a little bit about the quality of the pictures.
That's a great question. And, from the time we started developing this, and I was out, talking with, with equine veterinary professionals, and they were like, that's great. How's the image quality? How's the image quality? And it took us some time because we were focused on other facets of the development, the robotics and other technological aspects of it. And when it came to image quality, we made, a very big investment in terms of, making sure that it was, diagnostic and comparable. And the way we tested that out is we took a cadaver limb and we imaged it with our system. And the reason why we used the cadaver limb, because then we sent that limb to some place that had a Toshiba CT system, which is, one of the best medical CT systems, and they imaged with that. And then we sent it to another practice that had a Samsung CT system, which again, one of the, best in the market. And then we took those three images and we gave it to some equine radiologists and medical professionals, and we said, tell us which one is the best. And at the end of the day, they said they all look great. And that to me was the validation of that we know our image quality is on par with, the state-of-the-art CT imaging systems out in the marketplace today.
Incredible.
Wow, that's amazing.
So the big question, when will it be available?
Yeah.
Let's see, what time is it? No, seriously, there's two paths we're going down on that. This is something else I wanted to speak about. As far as turnkey, commercially ready systems that are going to be 100% functional, we're projecting those sometime around the middle of 2021. So a little over a year for that. But we're also working on a parallel path, and we're working with some very, very large, prestigious practices out in the country to be, what we're calling early adopters, in which, we'll install a beta system, and that, they're safe, they're functional, not quite 100% commercially ready. But we're doing this for two reasons. One, it's a great opportunity to partner with these, really, really prestigious firms. But also, in the final stages of development, you can't do everything in a laboratory. You're going to want some practical experience that's coming from the field, and partnering with these practices is going to give us that information. And, that we're anticipating in about 6 to 8 months to have those systems ready to be installed. And then that will coincide with the systems ready to be deployed out to the market, that are 100% commercially ready.
Is there any comment that Ocala is one?
This is a Florida-based company. There better be.
I'm sorry, go ahead and ask the question.
They're going to be in Ocala, right?
Well, possibly, but Louisa brought it up and said, yeah, we put a stake in the ground when we started Prisma, and I relocated down to Florida. And I picked Florida for a couple of reasons. We were working with the University of Florida on a couple of different things. Florida is a great equestrian state, and it's a great state to do business in. So that's where Prisma is a Florida-based company. We are doing the final stages of development out in California, but that's only because the very, very specific skill sets and technologies are out here. So it makes sense for us to do that here.
Michael, now, you mentioned I hate to interrupt you, but I just got the wrap-up sign. So two segments just flew by, but I want to thank you so much for sharing with us all this incredible information. You can get more information at PrismaImaging.com. You can also follow them on social media. This is truly a game changer in horse healthcare. We're very excited to see it, and we certainly hope it gets here to Florida very quickly.
Have him back.
Yes, we do. Michael, thank you for being on the show with us. We'll be back. Thank you. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We have a pre-recorded segment for you. Actually, Michael, stay on the phone. We'll be back in just a few minutes on the Horse Talk Show, presented by Palm Chevrolet. Stay with us.